You killed him. No, I did not. I gave him life. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, coming at you for one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. This time I'm coming at you with a movie/Blu-ray review of Re-Animator, and then I'll talk about the fantastic recently released Blu-ray limited edition set by Arrow Films, I always say Arrow Films, Arrow Video, which recently came out. I can't remember, this I think came out in like late July, early August, or something like that, I think. I can't remember. It recently came out. So I'm going to talk about the movie, and then I'll talk about this fantastic release. Now, Re-Animator is a movie that I believe I saw when I first saw when I was 13. Me and my dad on Friday nights would very often go to the video store and rent, in most cases, a lot of times, especially during that time in my life when I was 13, we'd probably more often than not rent a horror movie, and then we'd go get a pizza at a kind of independently owned pizza place, and oh my gosh, those were the days. So on some particular, Friday night, I imagine, or something like that, when I was 13, we rented this movie, and we probably grabbed a box at a video store that looked basically exactly like this. This is a VHS I required after the fact, previously viewed. I can't remember when, obviously, after we rented it. This is the original, this is the unrated version, Vestron Video VHS of Re-Animator. Now, as far as I can remember, they put out two versions, an R-rated and the unrated, obviously. This is the only version I've seen of it. And I'm actually kind of curious to actually see the R-rated version. I've never seen it. But this is the unrated version is the first version, and actually the only version until I got this Blu-ray of Re-Animator that I saw, which is of course the best way you're going to want to see it. I've always loved this cover. I always thought that was a great cover that, I don't know, they probably took for the Vestron video release. I don't think that picture was ever featured in the kind of theatrical poster materials, but this cover was very, very catching always. And this tagline is great. Herbert West has a very good head on his shoulders, and another one in a dish on his desk. And another cool thing they did with this VHS release is they kind of did H.P. Lovecraft's Re-Animator, and then Death is just the beginning. So you got a lot of kind of cool phrases, words. Really kind of a cool cover, to be honest. And of course, just how cool is that? Like, just this head in the pan, and this crazed guy with a syringe, and these hands coming out from the background in the darkness. And of course, if that cover doesn't get you, you're gonna, if you turn the box over to look at the back, these two pictures are gonna guarantee that you're gonna rent this movie. I mean, you've got basically two pictures, and they're both of a headless corpse who is walking around, and one of them he's carrying, of course we don't necessarily know until we've seen it, but he's carrying his own head in a dish, or whatever you want to call that thing. So here's the back of the original Vestron Video unrated VHS box, so that's very cool. And then the second release I got of this movie is the, I think Elite Entertainment, back in 1995 I think it was, put this movie out on Laserdisc, and that was the actual first release. That was the release that the audio commentary, the absolutely fantastic audio commentary, was recorded for, and I got that release too. That was the second time I bought Re-Animator after buying that previously viewed VHS, and that I've got somewhere packed away. I don't know where the hell it is. I imagine I can find a picture of the Elite Laserdisc from 1995 online, so I can show you what the cover looked like, or what the artwork looked like for that. But that was the very first time, the commentary, as I said, was recorded for that particular release, and that release also included, I think, possibly deleted scenes. I can't remember what special features that Elite Entertainment Re-Animator Laserdisc included, but obviously it included the Stuart Gordon solo commentary, and what I regard as one of the best commentaries that I ever heard, with Jeffrey Combs, Barbara Crampton, and the other people involved, Brian Usna and the other cast members, before Re-Animator is absolutely delightful commentary. And then sometime down the road, I think they put out a DVD of this before, but then not until, I don't know, 2007, Anchor Bay would put this out. This is just like the cardboard case for it. I can't find the actual DVD case, but this one used some of this rare kind of artwork that I'd never seen before, although it's zoomed in really close onto his face. Some cool artwork, which I think was painted back in probably when Empire Pictures acquired the movie for distribution, and it actually came with a it's got a plastic syringe there that says Re-Animator on it, and it actually came with some of that glow stick stuff that you could, you know, break, and I can't remember how they worked it, but oh, I see. So the glow stick stuff is actually in here. This is really cool. You've actually got a syringe that says Re-Animator on it, and obviously back in the day in 2007 this fluid in there would glow. I can't remember how you cracked it to, you know, mix the two things, but that's what was included in this version, which is the first and only DVD I got of this release from Anchor Bay in 2007, 10 years ago. And this had a new 70-minute featurette, Re-Animator Resurrect, which is also included on the new Arrow Blu-ray. But as I often do, I like to show you guys, just for whatever reason, just collector sake, my you know, versions of a movie that I had before the current release. So on to the review of Re-Animator. As I said, saw it for the very first time when I was 13, and I believe me and my dad were relatively blown away by this movie. The sparse running time, which is just what's this VHS say? 86 minutes. The very tightly cut running time really does wonders for this movie. Now, this movie is the very first movie directed by Stuart Gordon, who originally had this, you know, you probably know, if you're a fan of this movie, you probably know all about, I'm not going to go into all of what Stuart Gordon had. He had some kind of a theatrical company, or I mean, playhouse or something. I don't know what the hell he had. It was something in Chicago, I think he had, where, you know, it was for performing arts or whatever, some kind of a, you know, theater for whatever. So I don't know, at some point it was Brian Usner or someone or else someone or other got together and got money together, and they decided they were going to do a horror movie. At the end of the day, this is Stuart Gordon's first movie, and, you know, as often is the case with, like, you know, Sam Raimi and so many others in the horror movie field, I mean, this is just a slam bang, you know, home run right out of the park. First movie. I mean, it's probably, I mean, obviously I haven't seen, well, it's not obvious, but I haven't seen every single movie Stuart Gordon did, and, you know, I can safely say, you know, I mean, I feel confident in saying that there's a very good chance that this is the best movie Stuart Gordon did. There's something about just, I don't know, sometimes your first, you know, your first movie or one of your first movies is just like, just the best thing you've ever done, you know, you'll ever do. And, you know, it's just, I think this is one of those cases, and definitely, if not his best, one of his best movies, I'm sure, that he's done. In this movie, obviously coming from like stage or whatever, and this has, you know, been alluded to in the commentary and retrospective documentaries and interviews and stuff, you know, something that was very unheard of kind of in this kind of genre movie or whatever, that they did a lot of I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 weeks of rehearsals before they actually started filming, and I would say that, you know, that definitely shows in the final movie. That's one of the first things I want to say about this movie, is the casting is absolutely, you know, absolutely perfect, and the acting is really good for this kind of a movie. It should be noted that, you know, in my opinion, Jeffrey Combs completely and totally steals this movie, and not that I'm a, you know, fan of awards for movies or awards in general, but, you know, if there were like horror Academy Awards or, you know, Oscars, you know, like I say, I hate Oscars and hate awards in general, but if I didn't hate awards, and if there were like, you know, some kind of Oscar equivalent for acting in a fucking, you know, unrated gore fest horror movie or something like that, you know, Jeffrey Combs should get like the all-time lifetime ever like achievement award for his portrayal of Herbert West in this movie. This movie, you know, much like I've said about Stuart Gordon's, you know, fantastic directorial debut, I mean, this movie for me, I mean, I haven't seen everything Jeffrey Combs has been in, but I mean, for me, I mean, this is Jeffrey Combs personified. I mean, this is Jeffrey Combs at the top of his game, and it's crazy because when I revisited the movie, having not seen it for a while, and it's like in the opening credits, it's like these actors, these actors, these actors, and Jeffrey Combs, and it's just like, and Jeffrey Combs. It's like to me, he's the star of this movie, and in the credits, he's and Jeffrey Combs. And as you can hear in the commentary, when they did the commentary in '95 or whatever, that he kind of said the same thing, like and Jeffrey Combs. I mean, I would hardly regard Jeffrey Combs as being the star of this movie, and it's crazy how he's like the last billing, but yet for me, he is the one actor that you really think about in this movie. Obviously, this movie was taken from, was it a short story? H.P. Lovecraft's short story by the name of, I think it was called Herbert West Re-Animator? I'm not a big fan of, books and short stories and novels and, all this kind of, stories in print or whatever, but I think it might have been called Herbert West Re-Animator. Obviously, it's not obvious, but I haven't, read the short story because I'm not a big fan of reading. But I've definitely seen the movie adaptation of that story. I think it's a short story, whatever. The opening scene is an afterthought that they did after the movie was complete. I think it was too short or something like that, or maybe for creative reasons, they decided to do the opening scene, which I'm really glad they did, because that scene, which was reportedly, I think, shot in a day, that was supposed to have taken place in Germany or whatever, when it shows Herbert West basically reanimating his Professor Hans Gruber, or whatever the hell his name was, and it really sets the stage for this movie. And I think if that scene hadn't been in there, it'd kind of be like, I don't know, that scene really builds up your anticipation, it really just smacks you in the face right off the bat and really shows you what kind of movie this is going to be in the best way. And I think in a lot of ways, if they didn't have that scene there, maybe the stuff that happens later on in the movie would have been a lot more, whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, would have been a lot more shocking and horrific had we not seen that, bit of gore right off the bat, which is absolutely fantastic, where he reanimates this guy and he pops up into the frame and he's like, ah, and the eyeballs kind of bulge out, and still now, like however many years later this is, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic gore effects, and just like, oh my gosh, looks absolutely cool and fantastic. Now this movie is really, 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 really low budget, and obviously it kind of shows that by basically, I don't think there's one exterior scene in the movie. Normally I really, really hate movies that like don't have any exterior scenes, apart from just establishing the outside of buildings and stuff like that. But that's really never bothered me about this movie. I think because the screenplay is so tight and so concise and so well done, and I guess the movie. I don't know how tight the screenplay is, but the movie, as it ends up in this particular version, 86-minute version, is so tight and just so to the point, and it's and also when you're dealing with the subject, obviously, that takes place in, this whole movie basically takes place in Dan's a house that Herbert is renting and just the hospital basically. So I guess the reason why the fact that the whole movie is basically shot indoors never bothered me, because the scenario was so interesting and the acting is so compelling. It should also be noted that I think Empire Pictures didn't have anything to do with getting this movie made, but after the fact, obviously, they basically acquired the movie for distribution, and I would imagine maybe that happened before the movie was scored, because obviously Charlie Band's brother Richard Band would do the score for this movie, which would end up being somewhat controversial because it was basically a blatant ripoff of Bernard Herrmann's theme from Psycho. And I, back in when I was 13, I was just pretty much all I was listening to was classical music and Mozart and stuff, and I really at the time really appreciated the soundtrack or the score of this movie. And also having just, I think at that same age, it was the same year I got into Psycho as well. And of course I didn't, even though it's kind of basically obvious, I didn't put the two and two together about comparing the theme from Re-Animator to the theme of Psycho until someone mentioned it later on, many, many years later. But just to say, basically just saying how much I really, really appreciated when I first saw it, the score, and of course I got this CD after the fact, which I think is a CD of like selections or from, you know, Re-Animator and Bride of Re-Animator that came out in the early 90s or something like that. I don't have it with me now, but I can show you, definitely should take pictures of it and show you the artwork for that particular release. So I think the music that was done by Charlie Band's brother Richard Band for this movie was absolutely fantastic, even if it was kind of, you know, the main theme was ripping off Bernard Herrmann's theme from Psycho. I mean, at least he uses different instruments and not just strings, so, you know, whatever. I don't really know what to say about Re-Animator, even this many years later, which is like, what, going on, what, 35? It's going on like 35 years later. It's just an absolute powerhouse of a movie that's really just catapulted so strongly forward in a fantastically amazing way by all the actors. I mean, you got the guy who plays Dr. Hill, Barbara, you know, very young and very nice, sumptuous, supplement. I can't think of the word right now. The soup kitchen. I can't think of the word. It's just very sensuous. Maybe sensuous. Maybe that's the word I'm trying to think of and can't say. Sensual, you know, buxom Barbara Crampton in this movie, and like all the leads are fantastic. This is probably the first movie I was introduced to that guy who plays her dad, Robert Sampson. I think he's got an absolutely fantastic voice, and he would appear again, obviously, in the later Stuart Gordon movie by the name of Robot Jox, and that guy was fantastic. He does this so well in this movie by starting the movie by playing this kind of suit-wearing dean of the school, and he ends up being, you know, he gets reduced to, you know, like a head-crushing, just kind of undead, lobotomized, you know, reanimated zombie at the end of the movie, and I just think his transformation, you know, my dad, I think, appreciated that when we saw it, from this kind of smug, you know, dean of the school to this guy who was just hitting his head on the glass and just drooling blood and shit. I gotta tell you that part of me, even though I know it's him all the way through, I mean, when I watch this movie, the transformation is so huge that it partially feels like, and I probably thought this when I first saw it, it partly feels like they almost got a different guy to play the dean after he gets killed, because the transition from that dean character to the, you know, the reanimated character is just so huge that it's just like you can't really accept that the guy did both parts, but he did. Robert Sampson, you know, definitely fantastic. That's his name, right? Yeah, Robert Sampson, absolutely fantastic job done there. And of course, the late great David Gale playing Dr. Hill was absolutely like perfect for this role, and he had the perfect voice and the perfect face and and who else is in this? Jeffrey Abbott. And I've already mentioned Barbara Crampton, and obviously Jeffrey Combs, Jeffrey Combs, which is so ridiculous to me. I don't know how that freaking ever happened, but it did. And, you know, somehow, I don't know how, but, you know, the movie, even dealing with all these ghastly and grisly, gory effects and all these kind of stuff like that, somehow manages to be, you know, humorous. And I think maybe the first humorous stuff in this movie is probably, you know, the stuff where people really start maybe laughing is the cat scene, you know, bringing back the cat and things like that are absolutely, you know, amazing. And then obviously when he gets, you know, Dr. Hill becomes involved and he tries to blackmail West, and West knocks him in the head with a shovel and shovels his head off, or cuts his head off with the shovel, and obviously bringing back Hill. And I mean, this movie is one of the best examples of the combination of just ghastly, grisly imagery and horror and comedy that you'll ever find. It's an absolute delight. Obviously, people who are squeamish might not really watch, you know, probably really shouldn't watch this movie. But I mean, by today's standards, I mean, it's really probably kind of light compared to shit that's come out since, like Saw and all that bullshit. But what can I say? 4-star movie. I guess, and I was teetering between like 3 3/4 stars and 4, but hell with it. I mean, let's just go 4 stars. The end of the movie, the end scene, kind of, I guess, in my opinion, might be one of the weaker scenes of the movie. But whatever. I mean, it's just such a fantastic accomplishment that I just gotta bite the bullet and just go 4 stars out of 4 stars for Re-Animator. This is the version I'm reviewing is the original unrated, whatever it is, 86-minute version of Re-Animator, because I've never seen the R-rated version. So absolutely fantastic movie. And now on to my review of the equally absolutely fantastic recently released Arrow video. This is a review for the limited edition, which obviously is limited and going to only be manufactured for, I don't know how they decide how long it's going to be manufactured, but this is the Arrow video release, which just recently came out. This is the cover, just like their release of Hills Have Eyes. This is like a cardboard sleeve thingy, limited edition. And to be honest, I'm not 100% loving, the Hills Have Eyes version had, or the Hills Have Eyes release with the kind of cardboard sleeve had a normal Arrow video plastic case that you slide in it. This version, unfortunately, doesn't have the plastic case. It's got this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it, this kind of case that slips out and you open it up, and it's got some kind of postcardish things that are like lobby card, I would imagine, reproductions, and then you open up the other flap and it's got the 2 discs. I'll show you the lobby card reproductions here to start off the review of the Blu-ray. It looks like probably all the backs of the lobby cards look like that, and this is an image that's absolutely classic and fantastic. That's kind of a lobby card image. Here's another one. That's some nasty ass stuff. I can't imagine that hanging up in a theater lobby. Very kind of simplistic image there of the reagent. And here's the, oh, that's something I forgot to mention about the movie. The Dan Kane character obviously is kind of meant to be, the audience. So there's just 4 lobby card reproductions, and then you got this booklet. But Dan Kane is, basically in this movie portrayed, represents kind of the audience coming into this, crazy situation. And it's interesting seeing his character arc from going from just reluctantly not wanting to be involved in it to, at the end of the movie, basically losing his girlfriend and taking the plunge and using the reagent to reanimate her, which is an absolutely fantastic ending. And of course, back in '91, I think, is when Bride of Re-Animator came out on VHS. I was just like, well, obviously it's going to be, when I heard that title, obviously it's going to be like Barbara Crampton's character that was reanimated at the end of the first one. It turned out not to be, obviously, but so this is, let me just, as always, I'll put a shot of the back of the box so you can read the 2-disc limited edition contents. I'll just mention some of them. I mean, Jiminy Christmas, there's way too much here to mention, but this particular edition features 4K restorations of unrated and, how do you say this word? Integral versions, high definition Blu-ray, they call it a digipack, yeah, which I'm not, featuring newly commissioned artwork. Not too keen on the digipack thing, but whatever. This is the newly commissioned artwork, which is fine. I mean, to be honest, that's one of the things that kind of stinks about not, having the digipack and not having just a standard Arrow video case, is because if they had the standard Arrow video case, they presumably would have been able to have reversible cover art featuring this, which I would have appreciated. But because you have the digipack, you've got basically this cover, this is the only artwork you've got, which is kind of a bummer. So, it's kind of cool. You've got basically all the audio options you could ever want from this movie. Obviously, sometime in the first decade of the 21st century, they made a 5.1 mix. Anchor Bay or whoever did it, sometime along the lines, did a 5.1 mix. Obviously, I would imagine this movie was originally in mono. So, as Arrow often does, if there isn't already existing 5.1 mix, they will include it. But this release has every audio option you could want, which is something I commend Arrow Video for, which is the original mono. Then you've got stereo, which I would imagine is just kind of like a down mix of the 5.1. Then you got 5.1, and then you got isolated score. It says on here, and interesting. It says brand new audio commentary with Stuart Gordon, and these, well, I don't know who these people are. Oh my god, of Re-Animator the musical, okay. Then you got the original audio commentary with Stuart Gordon, and the classic one with Brian Usna, Jeffrey Combs, Robert Crampton, Bruce Abbott, and Robert Sampson. Re-Animator Resurrects is the featurette, retrospective featurette, which was, I believe, made for the Anchor Bay DVD release, probably made for this one right there. So obviously you can, pause and read all the special features if you so choose. This particular version is this particular disc 2 is a limited edition exclusive, which features the integral, is that how you say it? Integral, that's how I'm going to say it, version, which is says available in the US for the first time. Now, it should be noted that both of these versions, from what I understand, are both 2K restorations, so it's not like the, oftentimes the case of the second disc or the second version of a movie on one of these special editions. They'll, the second disc or the second version will not look as good as the original version. I can basically, having watched both versions, I can conclude or confirm that the disc 2, the integral version or whatever, however it's called, looks as good as the disc 1, original unrated version. For the first time in the US, the 105-minute version, which is, looks like it might be 5.1 DTS only, versus all the fantastic audio options you have for the, the disc 1, the unrated version. I'm going to do a quick review of, the actual 105-minute version of the movie. I think it's unlike the longer version of Just Before Dawn. I feel like the 105-minute version of Re-Animator is just like way too much stuff in there. I mean, the stuff that it's really interesting because the stuff that's in there, like scene for scene, I've seen a lot of this stuff, a lot of these scenes in previous maybe Laserdisc or DVD releases, so as deleted scenes. So I think I've pretty much seen all of these scenes, just not in the movie. So the scenes on their own, I mean, they're not necessarily bad scenes. And like when you see the hypnotizing scene where Dr. Hill's hypnotizing the dean at dinner and stuff like that. I mean, when it stands alone as a deleted scene on its own, it's kind of like, oh, cool, imagine if that was in the movie. But for me, when I watch all these scenes that I've previously seen as deleted scenes cut into the movie, it just like makes the movie way too long, in my opinion. And it's just like, you can understand why this stuff was cut. And to be honest, they really should have kind of realized, before they even shot the movie, just by, reading the script, that this stuff was way too much. But it's hard to know, I guess, in some cases, and particularly it's his first movie and stuff like that. So that's my comment on just kind of my mini review of the 105-minute version, or the integral, or however they call it, version of this movie. My particular consensus is that the, disc 1 unrated version, which is the 100 and, what do they say? The 86-minute version, I think, the 86 unrated version, in my opinion, is the superior version of Re-Animator. It's funny, you get all this like extra footage, and in my opinion, it just kind of makes the movie not as good. And another limited edition exclusive with this particular release is they give you the entire Re-Animator, the comic, which is a 92-page, why are they saying, I don't know what perfect bound means, but it's they're saying 92-page perfect bound booklet containing Re-Animator, the original 1991 comic book adaptation of the movie, reprinted in its entirety. Now, it should be interesting to note I was a fan of Re-Animator and stuff in 1991, and I actually did, I don't know where the hell it is, but I actually did purchase at the time the first issue of it. I think they did it in 3 issues or something like that, but this is the limited edition exclusive, or the, you know, limited edition comic book, basically, in its entirety. But you know, it includes the entire comic book, which I'm not really a comic book fan myself, but might be interesting for you comic book people. So looks like potentially, yeah, it was a 3-part comic, but you got the whole thing here, which is kind of cool. And as for the image of the new transfer, obviously the best version I've ever seen this in is this one. It's like a 10-year-old Anchor Bay DVD presentation, but this was good for the time. It was you know, enhanced for widescreen TVs, and it had a 5.1 you know, both Dolby Digital and DTS options. So I mean, holy cow. Obviously the new 4K transfers of both versions of this movie is absolutely stunning. The colors just pop like you wouldn't believe, and the grain is, being a grain guy, as I've said so many times in the past, the grain is absolutely fantastically fully intact. Now there is a little bit of an issue very much with, like, it's funny because this movie is packaged like the Arrow Video's Hills Have Eyes, and it has the same kind of issue. And I don't know, you know, the movie's so engrossing, I kind of, you know, forgot off and on throughout the movie, but I don't know if it's during the whole movie, but it probably is. You know, during certain scenes, the only gripe I have with this transfer of this movie, and I think this goes for both versions, you know, the disc 1 and disc 2, is that in certain, you know, kind of darker lit scenes or whatever, if camera's moving and stuff, you are aware of, and I'm pretty sure it's on, like on right around here on the screen, like going down, is a kind of a, I wouldn't call it a white line, but it's definitely like a vertical, you know, something that's probably right about here that I think is there during the whole movie, depending on, you got to have the right kind of lighting, you know, it's got to be like a, I don't know, more darkly lit scene or something like that, and like a moving camera for you to notice it. But that's my only complaint about this, you know, new 4K transfer, is I think it's there for pretty much the whole movie. If the lighting, you know, the particular lighting in any particular scene is the right, you know, the right, or maybe the wrong way, you should say, to be able to see it. So that's my only gripe about the transfer. It's something that's definitely kind of a bummer. But I don't know what the hell causes that shit. Like I said, there was something like that, only I think it was over here. Something very similar that was on the other side for the, it wasn't the whole movie, I think it was just a, you know, a brief point, which I think I tried to document the time, the kind of the line, the vertical line started and stopped on that release, whereas this one, I think it's, don't quote me, but I think it's more or less there the whole movie, you know, if you've got the right lighting situation to see it. So that's kind of a bummer, but whatever. All in all, the image quality of this release on both versions is absolutely, you know, just the colors are unbelievable, the grain is unbelievable, the clarity is unbelievable. I mean, like I say, kind of like with my review of the recently released Blu-ray this year of Slaughterhouse. I mean, you almost, you know, this stuff is remastered, you know, mastered in 4K, and it almost looks like you're watching it. As a result, it almost looks like you're watching it on, you know, in 4K, even though you're not. The transfer is absolutely otherwise gorgeous. I almost forgot to mention, obviously, something that you could have read if you chose to pause and read the special features, but I wanted to actually make sure to mention this, which is a really cool thing, is you've got this feature on the, unfortunately this is only, you got to buy this now if you want this feature, because this is a feature that's only going to be included on the, you know, this disc 2, a limited edition exclusive, which is this feature called Doug Bradley's Spine Chillers, Herbert West Re-Animator, which is actor Jeffrey Combs reads H.P. Lovecraft's original classic short story. And I did the first, what I presume to be the first chapter of it. And it's really kind of cool hearing, you know, obviously Jeffrey Combs has kind of got that distinctive Jeffrey Combs voice or whatever. And it's really cool to actually hear him read the short story. I didn't have a chance to listen to the whole thing, but it's really kind of cool. One gripe about that is maybe the music they add to the, you know, during whatever scary scenes or whatever might detract. I don't know. I guess if there wasn't music, I'd probably be complaining that there should be mood music during the more scary scenes. But that's something worth noting. Really cool detail for the limited edition exclusive. Really cool to have what I would presume to be Jeffrey Combs reading the entire H.P. Lovecraft. Yeah, so it is a short story, they say so right here. So that's a really cool extra detail to be able to have. So I think that about does it for my review of Re-Animator and Arrow Video's fantastic recently released special edition, or whatever you want to call it, 2-disc limited edition of Re-Animator. Obviously, if you're a fan of 80s horror movies, and you know, if you're a gore hound, I mean, you've probably already seen this, so I probably, you know, but I guess if you haven't, I would highly recommend checking out Re-Animator. I think it's one of the best, all-time best kind of gore / comedy fests, which has just got the best sense of humor, the best. It's just like a perfect combination of just funny and nasty that you could ever want to experience. An absolutely slam bang stellar, you know, directorial debut, or feature, you know, film directorial debut by Stuart Gordon. Unfortunately, probably never really, you know, he'd probably never really match the greatness of this movie ever again. I think he got a 3-picture deal from Charlie Band's Empire Pictures immediately following this, and of course he did like Dolls and From Beyond. I don't know what his third. Oh, it must have been Robot Jox. So he did those 3 movies for Empire immediately following this movie. So you know, and none of which I would regard as being anywhere near the kind of just amazing entertainment, you know, amazing achievement Re-Animator was. So I think I've probably gone way too long, and before I go on any longer, I'll conclude the video. So thank you very much for watching my review of the my movie / Blu-ray review of Re-Animator, and as always, we'll catch you next time.